Merhabalar, ben Şükrü. Peer-to-Peer'in bu bölümünde eski gazeteci John ile birlikte olacağız. John şu an hayatını El Salvador'da sürdürüyor ve orada Bitcoin Diploma Programı'nı yürütüyor. Umarım bu bölüm hoşunuza gidecektir. Hi, John.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good seeing you.
Yeah, so today we are here to talk about you, the Bitcoin Diploma Program, and how things are progressing in El Salvador. I think it's the best to start with the guest and to know about you a little. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Sure. My name's John. I am originally from New York. I'm currently living in El Salvador. I've been here since August of last year, so a little bit more than a year, almost a year and a half at this point. And I had worked as a journalist before, but since I moved here, I've been working full time with Bitcoin education. I just think that Bitcoin education is everywhere, incredibly valuable, but specifically in El Salvador, and I think we'll probably get into this later. But specifically in El Salvador, it's just really important, and I'm just really motivated to making sure El Salvador is a success. So I'm the founder of a nonprofit education program here called My First Bitcoin, or Premier Bitcoin, and that's what I spend all my time on these days.
Yeah, so it's obvious that you also speak Spanish, and yeah.
Yeah, I lived in Ecuador for about 5 years. Spent shorter amounts of time in Nicaragua and Colombia. So Latin America is a place that for much of my adult life I've lived in, and I just love this part of the world. So
Yeah,
before
like,
this was
once
something.
you make to Latin America, people usually don't want to go anywhere else. Like they end up staying there.
Yeah, there's something special about here. At least for me, everybody connects with a different place, but Latin America is a place that I connect with.
So you said you are a journalist, and how did you interact with Bitcoin initially? Like, was it about WikiLeaks, or like, because Bitcoin was supporting like independent journalists in the day as well. So what is your story there?
Yeah. So I became interested in Bitcoin. I first heard of it and became interested in Bitcoin in early 2013 when there was the bank bail-in in Cyprus. Maybe for a super quick refresher for listeners who might not be aware, in 2013, the government of Cyprus had a funding issue, and in order to solve that, they gave everyone a haircut. So they took a percent out of everyone's bank account. I think it was like 12% or something like that, to pay back their debt. And I read an article about that, and in that article, it mentioned, there was just one line that just mentioned Bitcoin users unaffected. And I was like, what users?
You're like, what kind of a bank is this?
Yeah, I looked into it and I was like, oh, there's a money that is not controlled by the government, that is like truly independent. I was like, that is something that is very interesting, that I want to succeed, right? So I bought my first Bitcoin, I think within a week of reading that article. And full disclosure, I lost I lost that Bitcoin the day after I bought it. The exchange that I bought it on was hacked, and that was how Bitcoin was then. It was
even get to have a boating accident, which is sad.
Yeah. But yeah, so separately, I was doing journalism, and after I found out about that, I actually became very interested in money and how we arrive at value, mostly because of Bitcoin. Bitcoin kind of started the wheels turning for me on that subject. And then I wrote about it.
same for me. Also, like, you know, made me such a better saver. And
yeah. Bitcoin is the best teacher, right? Like once you get started, then you just follow Bitcoin, right? But I wrote about Bitcoin, I think possibly, so I used to write for The Guardian a lot. I went to grad school in England, so I wrote for a lot of British publications. And maybe the first mention of Bitcoin in The Guardian was an article that I wrote about, not about Bitcoin, but about a new currency in Ecuador, as it so happened. But I was also, in the early days of Bitcoin, one of the things that interested me was micropayments, because I thought, and maybe I'll take a step back, and I know journalism isn't the favorite profession of a lot of Bitcoiners.
I think it's a very good profession. Like normally journalism is amazing. The way journalism turned into is not amazing.
Totally agree.
Because like we are already, all of us do some small journalism stuff as well. We do our own research and, you know.
Yeah. And I'm actually attracted to Bitcoin and journalism for the same reason. Because when done correctly, both act as checks against power, right? Usually journalism is not done correctly, and seemingly with every year that passes, we stray further from that. But that doesn't mean ideal is wrong, right? Like I still believe that the ideal is correct, that it could act as an agent for change and a check against power. So one of the things, you know, with that thought in mind, that journalism is important, but it's on the wrong track, I think one of the reasons why it's on the wrong track is how it's funded, right? So the way that journalism is funded is funded through advertising, and that creates a bad incentive structure, because it creates, you know, the saying, if it bleeds, it leads, right? Like it creates sensationalism, and you know, it puts a focus on violence, and it just wants controversy. Like it's no longer sharing information or anything like that. It's entertainment is what it's become.
You know, they also say follow the money. Like when everything is based on the advertisement, you know, like it kind of becomes like in an interesting loop.
So one of the things that interested me in Bitcoin in the early days was micropayments. You know, like I had a blog at the time, and I put like a Bitcoin tip widget on the blog, so you know, readers, if they like something, they some Bitcoin. And this was back when you know, there weren't really any transaction fees at the time. It was basically zero.
And, I mean, like I don't know, maybe 10 million satoshis was a micropayment back in the days.
And I thought that Bitcoin could open the door to alternative funded models for media, right? Where it could be more from the audience, which is something, and there's problems with that, right? That's not perfect, because then it becomes possible, or it becomes vulnerable to audience capture, right? Then instead of journalism becoming what the advertisers want it to be, then it becomes what the readers want it to be, and that's a different problem. But it seemed like, okay, this opens up new possibilities. At least we'll see where those possibilities take us. And actually, you know, to come full circle, then there was a point in time where I kind of gave up on that, you know, because of transaction fees. And now with Lightning, it's kind of come back around. And now with streaming, you know, there's like podcasting 2.0, where you pay like a few sats and
it's amazing.
So it's actually like come back around again. So I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited about so many things with Bitcoin, but specifically to media, how we could reimagine the landscape of funding models. Do you think
it will take you somewhat back to journalism somehow, or is it?
You know, not anytime soon. So I believe in the ideals of what journalism could represent, and one of that is to be independent and impartial. And I am not in that position. Like if I wrote about El Salvador now, you know, I live in El Salvador. I'm very involved with Bitcoin adoption and
You also
education.
wanted to succeed, and so
Yeah,
could be biased.
We work with the government. Sometimes we work with other organizations. Like I wouldn't be able to be impartial as a journalist now. And that means that if you're not able to be impartial, then you shouldn't do it. It's not
Even that way of thinking is amazing though. Like, you are very open about it. I cannot be impartial now. So yeah.
So maybe one day.
What makes you biased towards El Salvador? Like, so what is the Bitcoin Diploma Program? When it started, how it is going?
Yeah. Okay, I'll try to answer all those, but keep me on track. There's a lot in there. So first, why El Salvador? El Salvador is the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. And I know that Bitcoiners do value the importance of that, but I think we might underestimate just how big this is. What happens in El Salvador, because it's the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin, what happens in El Salvador will echo around the world for a generation, right? So El Salvador will set precedents. It will be an example for the world. That is decided. That has, we have no choice in that. What we get to decide, what we get to influence is what sort of precedents it sets, what sort of examples. And I believe that the foundation for creating positive precedents and positive examples will be impartial, independent Bitcoin education, right? Yeah. Like this, not that, and I think that's important that it's independent and impartial, because once we lose that, then it becomes propaganda. Yeah. It becomes propaganda if, for whoever is, whether it's a company or a government or whatever, like it has to be independent and impartial.
It should be the proper way of using Bitcoin, like how everyone should use it without influence of any major company or country, basically.
And the task, really the goal here, really the goal of me, Premier Bitcoin, what we're trying to do is we're trying to empower people. Mm-hmm. So in order to empower people, what we have to do is give them information. They have to decide what to do with it. We can't tell them this is bad and this is good. We could just tell them this is and this is.
You decide on the trade-offs.
Because that's the whole, for me, that's the whole point of Bitcoin, right? Is to empower the individual. Like we get to decide. We have agency in our own lives. So, education is that's going to be the foundation. Then we have to be pure when we started there. We have to be independent and impartial.
Just teach them what Bitcoin can do, how it can help them, and see how they make use of it. So it's the correct way.
Yeah, and so El Salvador is just, I'm so excited to be here because it is the front line. It is the front line of the next war, right? And I don't mean that in like military terms. I mean that in what happens here will change the world. And what's really exciting is that El Salvador is small enough that we can make a difference. We could have an impact. Mm-hmm. We could put our thumb on the scale. And this is just, a combination of so many different things coming together here with Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador that gives us a chance to really decide our own future.
Yeah. When you think of it, El Salvador is like its location is nice. The weather is nice. The surroundings are nice. People are nice. A lot of people are away outside the country, and they start to come back now. So there's like so much room to grow in El Salvador, and if properly done, could make other countries want to follow the same route. It's easy.
Exactly. I think that if it's done right here, and I think we're on the right path, right? I think we're definitely trending in the right direction. So I'm super optimistic that it will be done right here. If it's done right here, we won't have to guess
what it would be like.
No, we won't have to guess which country is next, because every country is next.
Yeah, true.
If we do it right here, everyone is next.
Maybe United States the latest because they want to have their dollars and all that stuff, but who knows?
Right. I mean, the people who are, this is a paradigm shift, right? We're going to change the world. Not that we are going to change the world. The world is going to change, right? And I believe that Bitcoin will
provide the tool to help the change.
Yeah. And in a scenario like that, where the world is going to change, the people who are the most reluctant to change are the ones who benefit the most from keeping things the way they are. And that's basically the United States, right? If we could break it down into nations rather than individuals, then the US, there's a lot of advantages to the status quo that the US enjoys. And that's why I like El Salvador is a great place for this, because the way the legacy world is not set up to help El Salvador, right?
Yes. Nobody is El Salvador's best friend.
Yeah,
basically.
So that's why, and there's a certain like poetry to that the places and people that are most screwed by the legacy world will be the first in lines to adopt this and really see the benefits and bring forth that new world.
When I was in El Salvador, I was also like talking to people on the street, and like I asked someone, what does El Salvador manufacture or trade or do? What is El Salvador known for? He just looked at me and he's like, yeah, we just make El Salvadorans, nothing else. And now from that, El Salvador is going to be known as a complete new place that started Bitcoin adoption and growing with it.
Oh yeah, this is a long game, right? Like Bitcoin became legal tender last September, so it's not, we're not too much past that. This is going to take longer than a year, right? This isn't something that
and I think you are ready for it. Other people there are ready for it, and they're aware that it will be a long game. So that's why the focus on education is there.
Yeah.
So you started with the meetups in El Salvador.
Yeah. So me Premier Bitcoin, the first class that we had in El Salvador was in September of last year. And what we started with for the first couple of months, the only thing that we did was intro classes. So everything that we do, the philosophy that we have, so our target demographic are Salvadorians who are new to Bitcoin, right? Which is what most people are here.
Like 99%.
Yeah. So our target demo is Salvadorians who are new to Bitcoin, and our objective is to take them off of zero, right? So for the first, how we began was just intro classes, just these 90-minute one-off classes that, they're only 90 minutes, so you can't get too in-depth into anything, but just very basic, touch on all the basics. But an important part of that class and everything that we do is to try to make Bitcoin real to people, to try to make it tangible.
And not one all theoretic, but they do a transaction there. They either receive or send.
Yep, exactly. So every student will download a wallet if they don't already have one, a Lightning wallet, and we will send them some sats. They'll send it to maybe the student next to them, so they have a little bit of practice. And it's often an aha moment for these people who think that Bitcoin is going to be, beyond their level of expertise. And then when they actually do this, they download this app, they open it, they within 2 minutes, they've received and sent Bitcoin, and they're like, that's it? Oh, yeah, I can do that.
I can do this anywhere in the world and with anyone who accepts it, basically. So,
and it makes it real for them. Yeah, so that's a, you know, all everything that we do is interactive. So yes, we started with these intro classes. We also have meetups now. We actually have a meetup tonight. I know this is recorded, but we'll have a meetup tonight. So we have a monthly meetup in San Salvador, and also, which is the capital. It's the largest city in the country, in the capital. It's also where I am now, where I live. We also have a monthly meetup in San Miguel, which is the main city in the eastern part of the country. So those are kind of our two operation bases, right? San Salvador and San Miguel are kind of our two hubs. So far. There are 14 departments in El Salvador, and we have reached 13 of them so far. I think the 14th will reach next month.
Are they is it the place where they have the central bank, or the most reluctant place?
The most reluctant place?
Oh, no, the fourth. I was just making a stupid joke.
Yeah, we actually had I didn't go, but there were two other people from Premier Bitcoin who went to a breakfast 2 days ago that was hosted by the Central Bank of El Salvador. It's a really interesting world here with Bitcoin, because, you know, as Bitcoiners, myself certainly included, I have a natural skepticism towards government, right? Towards state, towards any concentration of power. But the reality on the ground is that these are allies, right? Like, skepticism is good, it's healthy, we should always have that. We should always keep in mind, like, the situation, but we should also recognize that these are allies. So, you know, we have to work with them.
You know, maybe they are center of power because they don't know anything better too, because also a way of thinking it, maybe too naive, but
I mean, the legacy world exists in such a way that most people are taught to not question things, right? To just accept. And that's where I hope Bitcoin could be a really powerful tool to change that paradigm.
Yeah, teach people to question.
Yeah, teach people to think for themselves. Teach people to that they, I think what it is what gives me hope about Bitcoin, because I think Bitcoin is hope, is that Bitcoin, one of the lessons is that we are capable of more. We can do better. We are capable of making our own decisions. We are capable of taking responsibility.
Responsibility is also the key word there. Like, even with your private keys, for example, you need to learn to be responsible. It's, you know, they have this egg game for kids where you try to take care of it and not break the egg. It's the Bitcoin is that for adults, basically. So
because in the legacy world, we are often not responsible, right? We follow directives. We accept the way that things are.
And if something goes wrong, we get refunded anyway. So
right. Like, we live in a world where we don't make our own decisions and we don't suffer the consequences of our actions, which creates a lot of echoes, right? And it's just not sustainable. It's just not a sustainable world. And again, I think one of the tragedies of our modern world is that we underestimate human capability. Like, I really believe that humans are good, humans are capable. We can do better, but we need to be given the opportunity to do so. And I think Bitcoin gives us that opportunity.
Yeah, I choose to believe so. I choose to believe that humans are better, and yeah.
Yeah.
So started with the meetups, and of course, like during this time, you get all these different kinds of ideas, what can happen in the future, and how people can change and all that stuff. And you also went to educate people in high school. Or you
Yes.
started to educate high schoolers?
Yes. So now we have like we still do those intro classes. In fact, that's where the majority of our students come from still. We still have the meetups. And we do have occasionally technical classes, although our focus is always on beginners. But now one of the big things that we're doing that is actually, our area of growth, I guess you could say, because we're growing very quickly here, is we have a Bitcoin Diploma. So this is the workbook here. So that's a 10-week course. It's similar to the intro class in that it is targeted at people who are new to the space, and it starts with just laying the groundwork. So the first 3 weeks, again, this is a 10-week course. The first 3 weeks, we just talk about money. What is money? What's the history of money? How have we arrived at this point? And then in week 4, we get into Bitcoin. And because it's a 10-week class, we could go a little bit more in depth. We could set up a node in the class, talk about mining, talk about like things with a little more depth than a one-off class allows.
It's also good for the students to see an actual node, an actual miner, or experience all that. It's
same philosophy that I mentioned earlier. The more real we could make it, the better. So we started that in the first one was April 23rd. I know that's a Turkish holiday.
But it's a good one because it's sovereignty and children's holiday, so it's perfect education.
So we started in one school there in April. There were 38 graduates, and then in June, we started like another group. So every 10 weeks, we've actually changed the workbook because this all happened very quickly. So we kind of rushed to create the material. But with the acknowledgement that with more time and with feedback from students that we can improve it. So every 10 weeks, we actually come out with a new book. So this is the 3rd edition that we're using now. This is the 3rd group that we're teaching, the 3rd cohort. So the first one place, one school, 38 students. The second one was 2 schools, 100 students. And what we're doing now, we've expanded. Now we have it in, this is actually really exciting. Now we have it in 3 schools, 3 public high schools, but we also are running it starting next week with 2 mayor's offices, like out of City Hall with the local government in 2 other cities, and also on an island, which we're partnering with Bitcoin Beach to try to develop something of a circular economy on an island here. So
El Salvador, or
yes. So that is, now it will be about 250 students and in 6 locations. So we are literally every 10 weeks, we are more than doubling. Every 10 weeks, we are teaching more students than the entire history before. And that is our projections for 2023.
You can also have ex-students to teach new cohorts, and
there's actually a student in Ataco, which is one of the schools that we work in, one of the cities that we work in, and there's just a star pupil. He's graduating. He's in the final year of high school. He's just really into it, and on his own, he's like effectively a teacher already. He's just telling other people. So next year, he's actually gonna take over in that school, and he's gonna be the teacher of the younger.
That's amazing. He already has a job in a way, which is also like a big part of what Bitcoin does for El Salvador, creates more jobs. Like attracts a lot of investments and brain power, basically. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
really good to hear these stuff.
Yeah, we think it's important to, I mean, Bitcoin is valuable for so many reasons, right? And like we didn't even get into it, but maybe it's been talked about enough how Bitcoin, for 70% of this country is unbanked. So most people don't have the opportunity to save. Now they do. And that is really impactful because it changes our time preference, right? It makes us look into the future more, which just changes how we view.
There is, do you know Ishmael from Bitcoin Beach? So he's 17 years old and he started to invest in his own house. Started an ice business because there was no ice machine in his town. Started to give surfing lessons, saved some Bitcoin. With that money, he bought a refrigerator, started to make ice, and he's 17 years old. And without Bitcoin, he wouldn't have this notion of saving. So,
right, it gives us as individuals agency. It gives us power. But what we think is important is to create visible pathways to economic alternatives, and with Bitcoin. And this particular student this year who will be a teacher next year, that's one example. But we're also talking with companies that will recruit from the pool of students with the Bitcoin diploma to do a variety of things that have for apps that have a Bitcoin component to it. So there's a lot of call centers in El Salvador.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I know like a couple El Salvadorans that also work in call centers. Because,
so to recruit people who have this Bitcoin knowledge, who have been quote unquote certified, right? They have their diploma. To recruit them to work for, I mean, there's already some companies that we're talking to for like their customer service, right? Because they need some Bitcoin knowledge. But then there's just a lot of possibilities, and we think it's important that there's a path. There's a path that people could see that this could positively affect their life in the near term.
It just doesn't end after you take the course. Like you are open to do everything, and you have some opportunities already presented to us, basically, which is perfect. Yeah. So I was going to ask, I saw this recently again. There's a documentary coming out about my first Bitcoin diploma. So that seems really exciting.
Yeah, that's really cool. Where we're new to I'm new to this, but everybody on the team is new to this. So there's a steep learning curve, right? We make mistakes and we learn from them all the time. And marketing is not one of our strengths. That's something that we want to improve. But yeah, there's a documentary coming out. So Ibex Mercado invited, which is a Guatemalan Bitcoin company. They invited us to a meeting in February of this year at a school in San Marcos, El Salvador, which is a suburb of San Salvador. And from that meeting was born the Bitcoin diploma. And they acted as the sponsor of the first pilot program, that in this first school in San Marcos, those first 38 students that we had. So we crowdfunded 1.4 Bitcoin for it, but they also put in funds to, there were some infrastructure upgrades, like
computers or something.
Yeah, like a new cafeteria, right? With like a shelter, just a place where kids could eat without being exposed to the weather. And yeah, so they put the funds in for the infrastructure upgrade. And they've also been working on a documentary about that first pilot, right? And that first pilot is really important because So we have like, you know, we're operating in 6 places. We have other sponsors now. We have like way more students. And next year we're looking to do, you know, thousands of students in dozens of places with mayors, with schools, like so many things. There's a lot of,
hopefully also outside of El Salvador, some places will replicate you, and
yeah, for sure. We expect to operate in at least 3 new countries next year. But again, all of this is built on the, you know, getting off of zero is tough, right? So it's that if not for the first one, then there wouldn't be a second one. There wouldn't be a third one.
Just like El Salvador being the first country. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Same.
To start turning the wheel and then.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's a really exciting time to be alive, because we are.
I think the stars are aligning too for this program, El Salvador and everything. Yeah, John. Also, there's a big conference that's going to happen in El Salvador, Adopting Bitcoin. I think that will also be a big stage for you guys to show the program.
Yes, for sure. We are really looking forward to Adopting Bitcoin. We're really excited. So Adopting Bitcoin will take place from the 15th to the 17th of November here in San Salvador, and also 2 days in San Salvador and 1 day in El Zante, which is Bitcoin Beach. And I'm personally excited for it because, again, like, we need more eyes on El Salvador. We need people to actually come here, right? Because what is happening here is really special, really important. And I think it's hard to grasp that, right? As much as I try to impart that, like in this conversation, others, like, it's not the same. Like, when you're on the ground here, then you feel it.
Yeah. I was there last year, and for me, the experience, like being there, is like, it's similar to using Bitcoin. Somebody could explain it to you and this and that, but unless you start using it, you'll never understand how good it is. So El Salvador is like that for me. Like, once you are there, you see people, like, even at the airport, like, people were coming back to El Salvador after a long time. They were taking pictures at the airport everywhere, because it's a changed place even for El Salvadorans that are not there anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're, you know, this is the 2nd year that they're doing it, and I think it's going to be bigger and better this year. And like, we're really grateful to Galoy, which is the host of it, the organizer of the conference. You know, just to put a spotlight on what's happening here. And we, Premier Bitcoin, we're also really excited because we will be a beneficiary of the conference. So it's I don't know what it's going to end up being, because I don't know how much things will cost, but whatever profits there are, assuming there are profits of the conference, will go towards Bitcoin education, and a lot of it will, like, we'll get
Adopting Bitcoin is a special conference in that way. Last year too, like, they donated all their income to Lightning development, for example, and this year it's
Bitcoin education. They're doing us.
Are you guys planning on selling any merchandise?
Yes. So we're that is going to be a very busy week. We have, so again, I said it's the 15th to the 17th. We'll have a graduation. In one city on the 12th, so that's a Saturday. And that should be a big deal, because that's Bitfinex is a new sponsor of ours. So you know, they're going to be there, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And then during the week, you know, during Adopting, we're still looking at what the best options are, but we're going to have an event or two during the week. That could be a meetup. We have a house now, which we've turned into like a classroom / offices. So we might.
Does the house have a special name, like Hope House, or is it just a house or?
It's just a house. It's just like we call it. I mean, we just call it like the office or whatever. But yeah, no, that's we should probably come up with a catchy name for it. But for the moment, Premier Bitcoin House.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll do something during the week. I'll also be on a panel on the first day and have a solo speaking slot to talk about Premier Bitcoin and the importance of what's happening there on the second day. And then, we're going to do a bunch of activities at night. We partnered with Seed Signer to have some workshops in our house in the evenings where we're targeting Salvadorians rather than people who are just in town for the conference to teach them a little bit about security and privacy. And at the end of the class, they'll walk away with the Seed Signer.
Hardware training education is also crucial, and do-it-yourself hardware like Seed Signers are really to teach to people.
Yeah. And then on the following, after the conference on that Saturday, then we'll have another graduation in a city called Apopo, which is, I think we're gonna be able to team up with Stacey Herbert, who has really been championing Apopo as a place that has been transformed in recent years. It used to have a lot of gang issues, and it's really turned around. And just to show. I
recently saw her talking about spending time in Apopo, actually, and she felt really comfortable there.
Yeah. So we're kind of combining forces. She had previously wanted to organize a tour, and we have a graduation there because that's one of the places where we run the diploma program. So that I think the graduation is going to kind of become part of the tour as hope for a better future. And then I'm going to rest the next week.
Yeah, I think that's necessary. So okay. I don't want to take more of your time because you have a very busy schedule ahead of you. It was very nice speaking to you and learning about the Bitcoin Diploma course and what's happening in El Salvador. And hopefully, I still don't know, but I may see you in adopting Bitcoin.
Yes, I was going to ask that. So thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I really hope to see you at Adopted. I mean, everyone that is able to should come down and see what's happening here.
Bitcoin Diploma Programı ile ilgili olan bu bölümümüzün sonuna geldik. Umarım bu bölüm hoşunuza gitmiştir ve sizde El Salvador'a gitme isteği uyandırmıştır. Lütfen kanalımızı takip etmeyi ve bildirimleri açmayı unutmayın. Bu bölümü aynı zamanda da Satoshi Radyo'da podcast olarak dinleyebilirsiniz.